are back in the merry month of March. I know it's not March. It's supposed to be May. I know that. Don't send us emails. Send us emails. Gods at DigiGods.com. Gods at CineGods.com. So I think we will emphasize that if you are quarantined because of the coronavirus, you can listen to this podcast still.
Yeah.
You may not be able to go out to a movie, to a concert, to anything else, but you can listen to this podcast.
Our podcast has been wholly and completely disinfected for your listening safety.
Oh, it's hurting the business.
Oh man! So Mission Impossible, production delayed as well as release pushed back to whoever knows when. Theaters across Asia, certainly China, closed.
James Bond pushed to November.
Yeah,
yeah.
And you and I were talking a little bit about why this is so costly.
Yeah,
we're not sure. I have a hard time understanding, but you're right. There is a sort of chain of things that happens.
Yeah, I mean it's everybody locks in. It used to be back in the good old days where you made a certain number of movies and you released them into a certain number of theaters and you left them out there, and you pulled them from release or you put them back. But there used to be a way right up through the 1970s. Of just being a little bit more flexible. And now there's this giant pipeline of ancillary exploitation where the movie comes out and while the movie is out, we're preparing the digital release and the DVD release, and then it goes to this and this, and it's all lined up in such a giant chain of dominoes that if you mess with any one part of it, you're likely to just you have other movies lined up behind.
Yeah,
right?
I do know that ad buys is a thing. I mean, ads are being bought now for things that are meant to be seen like 2 or 3 years now. So money is being spent or committed, and how much of that can be recouped, I suppose. Advertising agencies and the networks and all the different places. So I guess I'm beginning to see how it could reverberate.
Yeah, it's just a ripple effect. It's just a massive ripple effect because everything is so interconnected now. And that, to my mind, is an argument against over-interconnectedness. Because which I realize for giant corporations, everything has to be predictable to some level. So you want to be able to tell your shareholders, and I hate that
word shareholder.
Shareholders, you want to be able to tell your shareholders what's going to happen in 3 years because of what we're doing right now. And that's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's not how the business should work. It's not how, and we're kind of paying the price right now. Look, we're not going to get a pandemic, every other year or every 10 years. It happens, once every 20 years. But, if even. But it's hurting, and we'll see.
Well, the one spot where the hurting is most obvious and most evident is actual production.
Yeah.
Right? So places in the world, which is just about everywhere now, where this is an issue, productions are either shutting down or not going to in the first place.
Yeah.
I would not want to be a part of the Italian film industry right now.
No.
Which is just so unfair, by the way, because the only reason why they have more cases, relatively speaking, is because they did broader, deeper testing right from the beginning. So therefore, they simply identified more. It'll all level out eventually. But anyway, I would not want to be a part of the Italian film industry right now. I suppose the Japanese film industry is having a tough time right now. The South Korean film industry is having a tough time right now. So
and on the heels of Parasite, that's sucks.
And of course what that plays out in the paychecks of ordinary people.
Yeah,
or, regular. And I'm not just talking about writers and actors; they'll be fine.
Catering people, and your various vendors, Teamsters and truck drivers,
and all kind of stuff. So these things, they reverberate. So we shall see where we are soon.
Well, anyway, like I said, you don't have to go out to enjoy this podcast. So there we are. Otherwise, not a lot happening in the world of film and television. But you know what? We're going to get right into it with some cult stuff. And we haven't talked about cult in quite a while. Wow, what a crazy bunch of cult stuff we've got. I'm starting off with something from 1987. Tim, had you ever heard of Edge of the Axe.
No. And
Neither
I would
have
have remembered a movie with that title. I'm almost sure of it.
Well, it must be some crazy cult thing because Arrow picked this up. Arrow Video, it finds a lot of really, I mean, they really loaded it up in a Criterion level way with all the extras. This is a Spanish slasher film from 1987. Directed by Jose Ramon Larraz, who did Vampire and Symptoms.
Ooh, Vampire! I love that movie.
Yeah. Okay, so he's done a lot of slashy, hacky, exploitation-y stuff. I mean, it's a slasher film. It's not any better or worse than anything else from the '80s. It's up there, Friday the 13th and all the Halloween films. It's sort of in that same place. It's funny because it's supposed to take place in California, but they shot it in Madrid.
A little bit of stucco.
So it, I mean, it doesn't look like Madrid, but it also doesn't look like California. So not that matters, but so it's basically about a guy, who runs around at night with an axe and kills people, and that's it. And they've got to try to figure out who he is and stop him and all the rest of it. The best part of this, actually, is the audio commentary that they have with The Hysteria Continues, which is a podcast I was not familiar with, but it's a podcast about basically underrated gore films, of slasher films, horror films, and it's really good. It's really good. It makes me want to listen to more of their podcast. There are interviews with, actors. There's commentary with Brian Fox and an interview with Brian Fox, the main actor in the thing. There's an interview with the makeup effects guy, which is actually quite interesting as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on here. And the movie is Edge of the Axe with this fantastic tagline. Here I go, my best tagline voice. There is nothing silent about nights in Paddock County. What does that even mean?
I just is it even a Christmas movie?
No.
I thought there might be. No, never mind.
It's just I don't understand. I don't get it.
No.
Anyway, it's just the worst tagline ever. Makes me laugh because that's not even a tagline. That's like something. That's like something you would just say to somebody in passing. It's like, you know what, Bob? There is absolutely nothing silent about nights in Paddock County. It's just a loud place. It's not a tagline.
Particularly like apropos of nothing.
Yeah. Woody Allen's biography, his memoir, speaking apropos of nothing.
Oh, indeed.
Coming out in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So I've already pre-ordered it.
Go for it, Woody.
And there are, people protesting and whatnot.
Oh, for God's sakes. Pull yourself together.
Yeah, seriously. What else do we have in the cult realm? We have Hail Mary! ! This is just the strangest thing in the world. Here's a tagline. Get ready for the Sumo Bowl. They call this a family football comedy, and it stars Eddie Mecca, and I have no idea who he is. I just read you everything that is on the cover of the box. So the idea here is this is a silly exploitation comedy, and it played a bunch of festivals I've never heard of, and it's actually kind of funny in a really cheap, weird, lame kind of trauma way, like in a Sergeant Kabuki Man kind of way. So the idea here is that you have a football team where the quarterback can't get anything done because it's just his line, his offensive line sucks. So they replace it with sumo wrestlers.
You know what? In 1997, that would have been a Keanu Reeves movie,
right?
Or maybe Scott Bakula.
Oh my gosh. The craziest thing ever. And it is kind of funny. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be as funny if it had an A-list budget.
No. But
because they made it for like $19, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, well, they had to feed those sumo wrestlers.
And then we have VIY. This is really creepy. Like, really creepy. I'd like to laugh at this, but I can't. It's based on a novella by Nikolai Gogol, the famous Nikolai Gogol. And it was made previously. There was a movie, a Mario Bava movie called Black Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
So this is from 1967, and it is significant because it's a Russian film. So it was a horror film made in Russia at a time when horror films were completely discouraged. and hence why it's based on Gogol, because Gogol is kind of a significant figure in Russian literature. So there was some legitimacy to this and being able to make it, and it's sort of like Der Golem, if you're familiar with the Hebrew, the European German Hebrew story of Der Golem, which is one of the earliest horror films in the silent era.
Mm-hmm.
It has a slight quality of that as well, and it takes place in the 19th century in Russia, where you've got this young student who has to sleep 3 nights, spend 3 nights with the corpse of a witch, and from there it gets really super bizarre and creepy. And I won't tell you what happens because it's sort of like about every 15 minutes, and this thing's only 77 minutes long. About every 15 minutes, something happens that you would never expect, and it's totally rational within the context of the story. And so at 77 minutes, it's a real roller coaster ride. It's a really interesting, fascinating film. This is from Severin. A lot of really interesting extras on here. Richard Stanley, who we talked about last week, because he has that new whacked out movie.
Nick Cage thing.
Yeah. Richard Stanley does an interview on here, which, as if you know from my story about Richard Stanley last week, Richard Stanley is like a scholar of all things from the occult. And his interview here is really interesting. He gives a context to this thing that is fascinating, the whole idea of VIY and what VIY is. And I won't tell you. And then they've got John Lehman Riley on the history of fantasy and sci-fi in the Soviet Union. And some interesting short silence that are fine, and then a trailer. But it is VIY. It's definitely worth checking out. One of the most interesting horror films of the 60s because it comes from the Soviet Union. It's not American exploitation. It's not a slasher film. It's not, Japsploitation or Ozploitation or Giallo or whatever they call it in Spain. It's none of that. It's from the same era, but it's totally unique. Quite interesting. All right. And okay. I'm going to go through these real quickly. The Nikatsu erotic films collection has just gone off the rails.
Ah.
That you have to understand. Nikatsu made just more movies than anybody has any business even understanding. It's a ton, and so we have volumes 34 through 40. That's a total of 7 volumes, 34 through 40, 7 new volumes from the Nikatsu erotic films collection. Some are softer than others. Some are angrier and more exploitive than others. They're all kind of in the same place, which is that they are emulating things that go on in the United States, in the exploitation world of the United States around the same time. From the 60s through the 80s is sort of that golden exploitation period when Nikatsu was doing a lot of this stuff. And this is primarily 80s era stuff. So if it's right in that pocket, kind of a little bit maybe more what was going on in the U.S. in the 70s. We have Zoom Up graduation photo, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So this is pretty straight up softcore Japanese stuff. Then we have Nurse Girl's Dorm, Shamed Angel. That's just twisted beyond all belief. It's like hospital. It's hospital horror. That's the only way to do it. Nun's Diary Confession. Now that's you have to understand the whole concept of nuns and Catholic imagery in Japan has a really interesting cultural history. This is from 1978. And it's sort of in the same vein as the nun story, Japanese exploitation stuff, as is Women in Prison, which is just a straight up 1978 variation on what Jonathan Demme was doing for Roger Corman. It's pretty much exactly the same, not quite as rough and violent, but kind of in the same thing. And then you have some from 1988. Woman in a Box 2 is a sequel to Woman in a Box, and is pretty much more of the same. It's kind of like Saw.
Yeah.
Tokyo Caligula. It's not Caligula. It's not even close. It is from 1981. They just grabbed that title because it's really not. It's not very good. But it's meant to be a little bit shocking. It's kind of a exploited wife thing. And then lastly, the funniest of them all, which is truly hilarious, even if you don't necessarily like this kind of stuff. There's some humor in this. True story of a woman in Soapland. Tear. It's true story of a woman in Soapland, tear, exclamation point. I don't know why that title makes me laugh. But so you have to understand what Soapland is. And the Japanese, and they're just weird fetish industries. It's It has to do with bathing. That's all I can tell you. It's bathing in soap, and it's weird and fetishistic, and it's just uniquely Japanese because they do weird stuff. So anyway, if you're into this junk, I'm sorry, if you're into these films, the Nikatsu Erotic Films Collection, there are hundreds of these things. This is volume 34 through 40. It's just too funny. All right, finishing up here, we have got 3 from Mondo Macabro. And let me pull those out here. 3 from Mondo Macabro, which always comes up with some interesting stuff. The first one is, and remember, we've mentioned before, there's no copyright on Emanuelle. Emanuelle,
no. Yeah.
The Emanuelle films came out, and everyone quickly figured, hey, I could just spell it with 2 M's or 1 L or 2 L's and 1 M or with an E at the end or no E, and it's a different name, and I can totally trade on the whole Emanuelle phenomenon.
Make yourself an Emanuelle film.
Go nuts. So this one is Emanuelle in America. This is Emanuelle with 1 M, 2 L's, and an E at the end, just so you understand that. Bizarre, a publication I've never heard of, called this one of the most notorious exploitation movies ever made. And I am going to call that publication BS. This is not that notorious.
No.
But it's in the pockets from 1977. It's a Joe D'Amato film from Italy. The Emanuelle films were, of course, French originally, so the Italians looked at that and thought, "Hey, we got to get on that." And it stars Laura Gemser, who played Emanuelle in several of these films, I guess, at some point. You know what? It's erotic photography and all the usual stuff with men. It's nothing particularly great, but if you're a completist, you're going to love it. Dangerous Cargo is actually a much better film than I expected it to be. Dangerous Cargo is from the Greek collection. This is volume 4 of the Greek collection from Mondo Macabro, directed by Kostas Karagiannis, who did a lot of exploitation stuff in the 1970s. This was made in 1977. And I didn't realize just how rich and deep the Greek exploitation industry was.
Wow.
It was. In the 1970s, there was a lot of it. For some strange reason, the Greek film industry has always been primarily associated with art films.
Yeah.
But in this case, no. They went and got some American actors. In this case, they went and got Deborah Shelton, who was a former Miss USA and obviously had no self-respect at this point in 1977, because all this is it was shot on a ship. It looks like it was shot on a ship, and they try to do the Wages of Fear thing, like the ship has nitroglycerin on it.
Yeah.
So how can we have sex parties on a ship with nitroglycerin? I don't know.
Quietly.
I don't know. It's just really dangerous. It's dangerous because if you rock it too much, the ship might explode. It's the dumbest idea in the world. The Beast and the Magic Sword. Oh my gosh. The Beast and the Magic Sword is a Spanish-Japanese co-production from 1983, directed by Jacinto Molina. I don't know how you wind up with a Japanese-Spanish co-production. I didn't know that was possible. But somehow they did this, and they went and shot it in Toshiro Mifune's studios. And it's so bizarre. this is the very last film that Paul Naschy would ever be in, apparently, from 1983. Paul Naschy, big exploitation figure.
Yeah.
And it's like this weird combination of Japanese swordplay fantasy and Spanish exploitation that is just totally bizarre. It's really, really strange. It's a primarily Japanese story until you get to the monster stuff, like the Japanese swordplay and all that is like, okay, it's like a Spanish director trying to do like a Japanese period film, and like, why do we suddenly have monsters? It doesn't like it's just weird. But anyway, it's got an interview with Paul Naschy in it, and an audio commentary by a couple of by Naschy Cast, which is another podcast. Two people, Rod Bennett and Tony Gwynn, who do a thing. Anyway, it is what it is. It's not my thing, but maybe it's somebody's.
Yeah.
The last few here, we've got 4 from Severin. I'm going to save the best stuff for last. 4 from Severin. The Peanut Butter Solution. Not to be confused with what was the recent thing? The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Oh, the Peanut Butter Falcon.
Yeah, this is not that.
Shia LaBeouf's thing.
This is not that. This is the Peanut Butter Solution from 1985, which is actually quite bizarre. This thing was a real cult thing in the 1980s for sure. I definitely remember that, and it's not as scary now as a lot of people thought that it was at the time. It is a oh gosh, how do I even describe this? It's like a kid fear movie. It's one of those movies that it's got creepy kids, pattern baldness. I don't know. It's just you kind of got to see it to believe it. It's just really from Mars. It's more interesting because it's got a lot of extras on it that sort of get into all of this stuff. There's an interview with the producer, and there's a commentary with the producer and some of the actors. And there's a featurette on here called Tales for All, which gets into this kind of weird genre that existed at the time, and that sort of exploited children and fears of children, and that sort of underlines what's going on here. But it's like, I guess, how can I explain this? It's a weird genre that is sort of like if you were to take The Goonies and, no, let's say Stranger Things. And instead of Stranger Things actually being about the exploits of kids, but the exploitation of kids, that's sort of what's going on. It's a little bit disturbing.
Wow.
The other Severin titles here, real quickly. Cries of Pleasure is a Jess Franco film, which means that it's junk.
Yes, it's Jess Franco.
From 1982. Jess Franco made a movie about every other week. And, I mean, this is kind of standard Jess Franco erotic thriller with, the usual doses of depravity and violence and gore and whatnot. It's pretty standard Jess Franco fare. We have another
girl from Uncle.
A slightly better Jess Franco film is Night of Open Sex, because it tells you exactly what it is. It's all about it's an orgy film in which everything goes wrong and everyone pays the price. And Jess Franco's even in this, which is unusual. He actually shows up in this. This has some good extras on it, especially the interview with Steve called Night of the Open Jess, where the author of Murderous Passions and Flowers of Perversion, the Delirious Cinemas of Jesus Franco, Stephen Thrower, talks all about why this is relevant. And I would almost say he convinced me, almost. The best of the Severin films is Weak as the Astrologer, which is the debut film from James Glickenhaus, who would do things like Basket Case, 2 and 3, Frankenhooker, Maniac Cop. Did a lot of exploitation stuff. But his first film in 1977 was The Astrologer, which is actually it's an excuse to sort of use astrology as an entry point for all kinds of gore killings and whatnot. But the idea of astrology is kind of the something occultish as an entree for a genre film I'd never seen before. So it's apparently based on a novel, and they did a really, really good transfer of this from the original material, and it's not bad. for what it is, it's absolutely not bad. There's also an interview with the Glickenhaus on here too.
Yeah, I made a movie called McBain.
Yeah. Totally.
Crazy film. Yeah, Christopher Walken. Yeah, you got a few more?
Yeah, just two more real quickly. Here are the best ones. So Blue Underground, a Lucio Fulci film, House by the Cemetery. This is a really beautiful 3-disc limited edition with a lenticular cover, which is always like, ooh, we don't get these anymore.
I wish Mark were here.
So Blue Underground did a really great job with this. Tons of extras. Great Blu-ray extras on here, especially. The film is on the first disc, which includes an audio commentary with Troy Howarth, who wrote the Lucio Fulci book. And then all the extras are on the second disc, which is also Blu-ray. Interviews with everybody involved. They went to town. They found everyone, including the cinematographer and the actors and everybody, the effects artist. It's really impressive. And then there's also a third disc, which is the CD of the original soundtrack by Walter Rizzati. So it's great. There's a booklet. I mean, it's really, really, really nice set. Now, I'm not a huge Lucio Fulci fan, but if I have to pick one of the Giallo guys, I'm probably going to go with Fulci because he sort of doesn't care. He just says, you know what? I'm just going to go for broke. And the idea here is that you have a really stupid family who are really doing well in New York City, and they think, you know what, we want more space, so let's go to New England where all the horror films happen. Because people who go to houses in New England always die. And that's true. So they move, of course, into a house that was, previously an experiment dungeon and has all kinds of horror going on and still there. And anyway, it is what it is. It's a gore film and a haunted house film, and it's actually, for what it is, it's very, very effective. And then lastly, Terror Firmer from Lloyd Kaufman and Troma, which is completely bananas. This is the 2-disc Blu-ray 20th anniversary edition, and I just can't recommend this film highly enough. It's completely bonkers, like everything Troma. Lloyd Kaufman really knows how to go completely insane. This is perhaps the most surreal, off-the-wall film that Troma has ever made, and that is saying a lot. This is the director's cut. Ron Jeremy's in this, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Come on. How do you not give it up for that? So it's just completely bananas. Don't even worry about what it's about. It is truly kind of the culmination of all things Troma. It's on Blu-ray. Terror Firmer, the 20th anniversary. Good on you, Lloyd. We love you. You're one of a kind.
He's still alive.
He is still alive. So I get emails from him every week.
Yeah, that's
hysterical.
Fantastic. Love it. Shall we move on to some LGBTQ business here a bit?
Do it.
Let's see what we got here. Got some stuff from TLA, a little a Breaking Glass, and if I'm not mistaken, there's a first run feature in here someplace too, including this really wonderful Swedish animated film called Top 3. It's just wonderful little flat digital animation that I thoroughly enjoyed. It's only a 45-minute movie. It's about this guy named Anton, and he's a list maker. He's always making his list of top 3. And he sort of guides and shapes his whole life by these top 3 lists. He's in love with this guy. The guy he's in love with, of course, is not a list maker at all, and completely different from him. The whole movie's just about how you manage to work your way through a relationship where you're very, very, very different. This is funny. This is a funny one that he has. He makes a list where he says, let's see. By his top 3 list, and he says, top 3 idiots he hates the most. Number one, the prime minister. Number 2, me, meaning himself, which I think is kind of nice. If idiots you hate the most, put yourself on the list. And number 3 is his boyfriend David. Anyway, it's a really, really funny and sweet film that sort of explores relationships in that way. There's also another little short film on it called Halloween Trick. It's also a perfectly lovely a little movie. That one's a live action film about these guys who go to this Halloween party. But the animated film, the 45-minute animated film, is really the lovely thing. It's from Sophie at Vardenson. And she's just doing wonderful work here in this little bitty movie, Top 3. Then we've got Kill the Monsters. This is the one from Breaking Glass. Kind of a lovely film, black and white. Reminded me of a Jim Jarmusch film. With a sort of gay theme insinuated into it. These 3 guys, they're buddies. One of them gets sick, sort of oddly ill, and they can't figure out what's going on with him, so they decide to take a road trip across the country to go to this sort of holistic medical center in order to get him checked out and see what's going on. And as they take this trip, they're sort of wandering through the history of America and juxtaposing themselves as three gay men to the history of the places where they go, and the things that happen there, and the way things were there at any given moment in time, including through down south, where they sort of explore the Civil War period. It's a really sort of interesting movie. Black and white. Special features include an interview with the cast. And again, sort of think of Jim Jarmusch in the middle '80s. When he was making
that was when he was making his best stuff.
Yeah, kind of really really neat stuff there. An American allegory, Kill of the Monsters, an American allegory. And then we have this Mexican film, a rather poignant Mexican film called Bittersweet. It's about this young man who's gay, but he's the only man in his family. He has his mother, he has his grandmother, and he's trying really hard to be the sort of macho man that they want him to be as the quote-unquote man of the family, as he's taking care of things. Indeed, he is, in fact, in love with this fella who himself has a fiancée, so there's this sort of complicated thing going on in his life and these relationships, and it's all about his struggle to actually be himself. And of course, as happens in these movies, his secret sort of trickles out, and everyone sort of begins to realize what's going on. Look, it has alludes to Brokeback Mountain, ideas that are sort of in that movie about choosing to be who you are. Set in rural Mexico, in the rural Mexican countryside, which is absolutely beautiful, and of course gives it a completely sort of different patina. Being set in Mexico, where the culture is even more machoist than the culture here in America proper. So, an interesting sort of set of themes to look at just from that particular point of view alone, in Spanish with English subtitles there. And we have a lovely documentary called In Full Bloom that's kind of a complicated documentary realistic thing that's going on here. All right, so you have this is about a whole bunch of transgender people and one gay a man and several transgender people, and this is a doc. Now the doc is about them as they're making a play. So very often we're on stage with them in this play, and then we're behind the scenes with them behind the curtain as they're doing all the things that they do to sort of prepare for this play, and then of course there are the sit down interviews with all of them. So you have several layers of things going on here. The way it's informative is like this. As we watch the play that they're making, which is a play that's not particularly straight or gay, we're able to sort of see the way they shape themselves to put themselves inside these characters, and how much of themselves they bring to that when we're sort of behind the scenes, looking at it from behind the curtain. It's a really sort of neat look behind the curtain of what it means to be a gay, to be a transgender person, to be specific, one gay person in the movie. And what that means, particularly when you're trying to be a performing artist. It's neat stuff. Directed by a guy named Michael Brewer, whose work I do not particularly know. Got a movie here. This one is another one from TLA called Orpheus' Song. This is a pretty straightforward movie. A couple of buddies. The Mexican truck is going by right now. A couple of brothers, a couple of guys who are into their bodies, into the gym, into all that kind of stuff. One of them is straight, the other one is gay. They decide to go to Greece to hang out together. They meet this other guy while they're on this trip to Greece, and they have all kinds of wacky adventures together, including one wacky evening in a cave, which is transformative for the quote-unquote straight guy. In the movie. The one thing I like about these movies, they're really, really short. This thing is only 72 minutes long. It's in German with English subtitles, and it actually is pretty much fun. A pretty good deal of fun. And then we have one more from TLA, Leave It to Levi. The thing about this movie is this film contains a whole lot of explicit sex, so you got to be into that if you're going there. This is also a documentary, by the way, and simply about a guy who grows up in his sort of little ordinary life. The size he doesn't want to live that way. He goes off to New York, where he becomes a sort of a gay model, gay porn model, just a model. Great. Now, this is what's interesting. This guy is living a life in New York as a gay porn model, but he decides he needs a secret life.
No.
Now, he's already a gay porn model, but he's going to go get himself a secret life. a second career as a drag queen called Sassafras.
Okay, that's just completely from Mars.
I'm like, dude, you're a gay porn model. I don't think you need another secret existence. I think we're that's a bit much. Anyway, it's wacky as hell, a lot of fun. It is a doc, and it actually this guy cracks me up. He's hysterically funny. So for that alone, Leave It to Levi, a film by Jake Jackson. That one contains a lot of explicit sex. I know it because they put it right on the cover of the DVD, right here at the bottom. Warning: contains explicit sex. Where are we going?
We have got we got a bunch of films to talk about this week from new films that were part of the whole big award season onslaught last year. Some did a little better than others, and for reasons that I may not still understand. So I'm going to get it started with what I think was the most underrated film of the award season, Dark Waters. Got no love from anybody. Got no awards. Got no Oscar nominations. Nothing. And it's weird because it's completely in that Aaron Brockovich pocket that would normally be considered Oscar bait. And everybody in it, there's Mark Ruffalo, who stars and produced it, and Anne Hathaway, and Tim Robbins plays a heavy, and Bill Pullman's in it.
Oh, 10, 15 years ago, this is what? This would have been Inside Man. This would have been...
Yeah, this would have been The Insider.
The Insider. That's the one. That's what I was actually thinking of, The Insider.
The Insider, Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah.
It's one of those films.
Yeah.
And directed by Todd Haynes, by the way, who, Todd Haynes usually does very sort of stylistically aggressive films.
Mm-hmm.
Far From Heaven, and we could go on and on and on. But here he really dials it back. He realizes he's making a particular kind of film. It's like a man against the corporation film, man against the environmental abuse film, the motivated attorney film, which we could say the same thing with Just Mercy, which is about an attorney fighting the system to free a man from death row. This is a similar kind of motivated attorney thing. We get these a lot.
Yeah.
And in this one, Mark Ruffalo goes toe-to-toe, and this is a true story.
Yeah.
Goes toe-to-toe with DuPont. This is the story of Teflon.
Yeah.
People don't realize that the production of Teflon was created an enormous amount of environmental damage, and it wiped out, it killed people.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Let me tell you about Teflon. Now, that movie.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful documentary, and I think that was based on. What is that based on?
It is based on something. Is it the book?
I think it's based on a book.
Yeah, I believe it is.
So Teflon is in your blood right now.
Yeah.
There's not a human being on Earth.
Nope.
For whom Teflon is not in your blood, to some extent or another. That's how deeply this artificial has permeated it. It's astounding to me.
It's
and you're right.
It's
still right now. And people don't know. People don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, this is a story about multi-year effort to get to the bottom of what was going on with DuPont and Teflon and all that. It is a great film. Todd Haynes dials it back, no over-stylization. He lets his actors do the acting. It's a terrific script. It's just a really solid movie. It's a solid meat and potatoes good movie that's just put together in a perfect way. And it saddens me that it didn't get any love during the award season because Dark Waters is a really, really good movie. And you would think Mark Ruffalo being, very, very liberal activist, that this thing would wear its politics on its sleeve. It does not. It does not. This is not like a right-wing movie or a left-wing movie. It's not. It's this happened. This was wrong. Everyone agrees that was the case. And it does it. And the other thing is, Mark Ruffalo plays a character here who is devoutly religious as well. And that isn't, they don't shy from that. Hollywood movies will typically go
without becoming a faith-based film. It doesn't. No. It's not that in any way, shape, or form.
Not that at all.
But the fact of it is in the movie.
Yeah. It's in the movie. It is a really well-rounded meat and potatoes movie, and I tip my hat to everybody involved. Really, really solid. New York Times, based on a New York Times article.
New York Times article.
That's what it was, based on a New York Times article. Anyway, Dark Waters is the film. It is terrific. It's Blu-ray and DVD with Movies Anywhere on it, so you can add it to your Movies Anywhere locker and have a lot of fun. Tim, next one.
A couple of new ones, including Queen and Slim. Interesting, this movie, Queen and Slim. I reviewed it for the show. And the movie opened. It did okay. My review of it on the show
which was spot on. When I found I wound up watching it, I had these hopes that it was going to be like Badlands with a black couple.
Yeah,
and it just didn't.
No, it doesn't gel the way. It has some moments that are very sort of interesting. But the motivating thing of the film, right? So we have this young black couple. They go on this date. It's the first time they've ever met. It's a blind date or a Tinder date or whatever they do nowadays, and it's going horribly. On the way home, they get pulled over by this cop. Now, there's a whole series of things that happen, very specific things, why they get pulled over, their interactions with the police officer who pulls them over, and as you can see in the trailers that run for the film, the cop ends up being shot and killed, and these two go on the heel and toe, take it on the heel and toe. Now, for me, as I watched everything that happens here, and the cop gets shot, when she says to him, "We have to run," the one thing I know is I'm not going anywhere, sister. I don't know if you've been paying attention or not to what just went down here, but there's no reason for us to go anywhere. We're good. I'm good. I know I'm good. And not to mention, and then all of these things sort of happen to go on the run. And in the road trip, there's an interesting, funny sort of road trip thing that happens here. The people they meet as they travel down there. Bokeem Woodbine,
it's terrific
down there in Louisiana, and Chloe Sevigny and all these sort of folks. But the film itself did not. A very interesting thing happened with African American black film critics vis-a-vis this movie. We got kind of beat up by
for not loving it enough,
for not loving this movie enough, right? So like the black Twitterverse kind of came after us. How could you, as a black film critic, say something not, and again, it's not like I beat up on this movie, it's a fun movie. Yeah. But it wasn't the film that we had anticipated,
I don't think you do films any favors by lavishing them with praise they haven't earned.
No. Particularly a film critic, your audience will see that movie eventually and know you're full of crap. Yeah. Anyway, all kinds of great stuff on this in terms of special features, 4K, bonus features all over the place. A perfectly good movie to watch. It just didn't turn out to be Bonnie and Clyde or Thelma and Louise. As possibly predicted. Now, this movie here, Uncut Gems, which I know that I liked more than you.
Yeah.
But in terms of an appreciation of what these Safdie brothers do, the Safdie brothers have managed to pull off something that other filmmakers can't quite do. They make films, frankly, with irritating characters. In irritating circumstances and in irritating dynamics, yet the films themselves kind of work. Adam Sandler doing some of his best work as an actor in this film, not recognized this past award season by the Academy, certainly, but not by many groups at all. This film not recognized, and that's a shame so far as I am concerned. It's a film about this guy. He's a jewelry broker in New York, and he's just this lying, conniving, cheating, manipulative,
with the messiest private life you've ever seen.
The girlfriend and the wife and the kids, and he's got this thing, this opal. I think it's an opal. Is it an opal?
Yeah, I think so.
And this whole kind of thing. And Kevin Garnett's going to buy the opal, and there's an auction. It's
the 2012 NBA Finals.
And one of the things this film pulls off is, how that game ends.
Yeah, I did at least.
Yeah. Well, basketball people. Anybody can look it up. You know how the game ends. Yet, I knew, and yet the denouement of this film hinges on how that game ends.
Yeah.
And they actually pull that off.
Yeah,
even me there, sitting there, knowing fully how that game ends, they still had me on the edge of my seat there. So good in that way, and I don't know, man. I liked it more than you. Your assessment.
Well, for me, it was like a really neurotic New York jewel industry version of the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, or anything like unto it. And I knew how. Within 5 minutes, I knew where this movie was going and how it was going to end, and it did. And I don't like how the Safdies just try to make me really anxious by never putting a camera on a tripod. And
they keep it moving, don't they?
They keep it moving.
And shall we mention that score?
And that score drove me crazy.
It's some sort of electronic urban bang, clash, and smash thing.
It was like having a bug in my brain. It was so upsetting. I couldn't get past it. Couldn't get past it. I get why people love his performance, but I think he's given better performances. Like Ran Over Me, I think is a better performance.
A movie that both of us love.
Yeah.
Special features, the making of kind of thing on here. Other than that, so interesting movie.
All right, and then I got a few here, starting with Bombshell, which everybody thought, ooh,
Man,
we're getting
no,
absolutely not. We talked about Russell Crowe playing
Roger Ailes.
Roger Ailes on television, much better than what John Lithgow does here, with a whole lot of jowl makeup on. Not very good at all.
All kinds of problems with that movie, narratively as well.
Yeah.
The good thing about it is Charlize.
So here's the thing. Charlize Theron deservedly got an Oscar nomination. Well, no, she didn't get an Oscar nomination. The makeup got an Oscar nomination. Margot Robbie got an Oscar nomination specifically. Charlize did not, but the makeup won an Oscar. And deservedly, it's amazing. But her performance is particularly amazing. She acts through that makeup and she nails Megyn Kelly. You would swear she is Megyn Kelly. Through most of this movie, you think, wow, Megyn Kelly's playing herself. No, it's Charlize. It's amazing. It really is amazing. She gets everything right. The face, the body language, the voice especially is just creepy how well she does. It's a great performance. The downside of that is that she is so good that you realize everyone else in this movie is terrible.
Yeah. John Lithgow walking around in that fat suit, being 100% John Lithgow in a fat suit.
And Margot Robbie plays a character who doesn't even exist.
And there we go to this narrative thing that I really have a hard time with. There is a moment in this movie where they have Roger Ailes do this particularly humiliating and denigrating thing to this character. Now, the inference here is that Roger Ailes did that to somebody.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, the one person we know he didn't do it to is that character because she doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So now we've assigned to Roger Ailes, a guy who is a pig and repugnant to me, by the way. Let me just say that off the top. But we've assigned to him a made-up moment.
Yeah.
When this is unnecessary. He did plenty of piggy things that people will testify to.
Yep.
So do not assign to him a made-up moment. You diminish it all when you do that. This is what I think.
And Nicole Kidman is not at her best here either. It's just the whole thing, and then suddenly some guy walks in with like a pasted on Groucho mustache, and you're like, who's that? Hi, I'm Geraldo. You're like, I'm so checked out.
Yeah.
Like you're not even trying.
Yeah,
you're not even trying.
And that's the other thing. This film tries to have it both ways. This film wants to be funny. It is funny, very often funny. It opens funny.
It's tonally a little awkward. You're right.
Yeah, but you can't. You know what? We can't do Me Too and Time's Up and all of that and funny. That Roger Ailes piece on television was not funny.
No. Well, here's the thing. It has a 7-part documentary on here about the making of the film that's really good. And at the end of it, you go, why isn't the movie better?
Yeah,
it's weird.
Unfortunate.
3 others here I'm going to make quick mention of. Inherit the Viper. Oh, this is so sad. It's not terrible, but you go, why are Bruce Dern and Josh Hartnett in this movie? Josh Hartnett used to be like a star, you know? Like, what's he doing now? He's making foreign films. And he's showing up in Japanese movies as English instructors. He's doing all kinds of very strange things. Anyway, this is a like a rural drama that's meant to sort of address the opioid crisis, and it doesn't really go there. It's just a family drama, and it goes into a very dark place, and it's 30 years ago this would have been a movie about bootleggers. Today it's about people who deal drugs. It's not very good. It's very familiar. It's competently made. It's a pretty decent cast, but otherwise unremarkable. The Gallows Act 2. If you caught The Gallows, the first one, you'll probably totally love this. Otherwise, I would say go and look at the first Gallows, which is a pretty decent supernatural horror film. It deals with the hangman, who is this deadly spirit who kills people. Right? I mean,
it couldn't be more accurate.
I mean, it's what it is. But and what's a little bit silly about this is that it tries to sort of be J-horror at the same time. Like the roots of the whole gallows concept are very much drawn from The Ring and The Grudge and all that sort of stuff. And it's that part doesn't really work, but some of the scares are legit, and the cast is good, and it continues the story. The tagline: "Evil chooses you." Wait a minute, is it evil chooses you, or is it evil chooses you? I don't know which way to read that.
I think all those work, baby.
Yeah. Well, anyway. And then the last one I got here is Imprisoned, with Lawrence Fishburne as a warden who's really, really got it in for a guy who's trying to sort of rebuild his life after being released from prison. And this is interesting. This is a Cinema Libre release. It's a little unusual for Cinema Libre. They don't usually release films like this. But Lawrence Fishburne elevates this because he takes this warden character who would otherwise be very, very one-dimensional and really kind of gives him some additional cachet. And that I appreciate. That makes up for some of the weaknesses in the script. Otherwise, very, very good cast. Isa Morales is in this. Edward James Olmos shows up. It was shot in Puerto Rico before Hurricane Maria, and that doesn't really necessarily translate into anything. It's just a little bit of trivia. It's an interesting thing. But not a bad little indie. Probably should have had some kind of a decent theatrical release. Did not have one. John Hurt is in this too, I should say. So anyway, Imprisoned is the film, and the star of the film, the actual star, is Juan Pablo Raba. But nobody's going to go see a movie with Juan Pablo Raba, so they loaded up with Fishburne and Isai Morales and John Hurt and Olmos, and it winds up being pretty decent.
Got a few here.
Yeah.
That we can knock off, including this post-Civil War cowboy movie called The Warrant, with Annabeth Gish, who used to be on The X-Files, and Stephen R. McQueen, no relation, and the wonderful Neil Madonna, who I absolutely love. This is a film about this guy who hooks up with his son, and they decide that they have to go after one of their compatriots from when they were back in the war. What they find out is that guy is the leader of a gang now that's pretty vicious, and they're these town folks who've already band together to protect themselves both against that guy and a whole bunch of other people who mean to do them some harm. It's a pretty decent shoot 'em up. Set during the period of the Civil War. I love that it's sort of shot all across down south. It really, really sort of looks great and kind of like the period. Special features include some behind-the-scenes cast interviews with Neil McDonough and Stephen R. McQueen and Annabeth and Gregory Cruz. Casper Van Dien.
Oh, Casper.
Also in the film. I love Casper. Starship Troopers way back in the day. I See You. Great cast in this movie. Helen Hunt, John Tenney, and a kid named Judah Lewis. Helen Hunt, the wonderful Oscar winner in this movie. So we have a film about this guy who, with his wife, moved to this small town where he's a police investigator. A young boy has gone missing. He's investigating this what seems like a crime, at least the fact that this boy has gone missing. Meanwhile, he and his wife are living in this house where there seems to be this odd presence that eventually seems to insinuate itself into their son's body. And it probably...
I hate it when that happens.
It's always a burn.
We just got over that.
It's always a burn.
Always a burn.
It kind of sounds like the coronavirus, actually. But that happens. You look, man, it's an odd sort of thing what happens to people. 10, 15, I don't know, even 20 years ago, Helen Hunt was a major television star and a major movie star and an Oscar winner.
Yep.
And now she's making $1.95 thrillers. Not bad thrillers. This one's actually pretty good, but still a $1.95 thriller. Hollywood is a hell of a thing.
That it is.
Hollywood is a hell of a thing.
Yes, it is.
Emily Beecham and Ben Whishaw in this movie called Little Joe. Again, these little movies are the oddest things in the world. This is more or less Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
That's all. Emily, she's just this single mother. She's a plant breeder. She's growing this crazy new species that she developed. What does it become? Man-eating plant. Becomes man-eating plant. So, neat if you're into that kind of thing. Special features include interviews with Emily Beecham and the director, Jessica Halsener. It's kind of a psychological melodrama. The question is whether or not any of these things are actually happening, but you have to watch the movie to figure it out.
So we'll do some TV in a moment. I was gonna discover this stuff last week. I'm gonna blow through the kid vid right now, just because I feel like it, and we're spontaneous that way. So, first off, this girl freaks me out. From Nickelodeon, JoJo Siwa, D.R.E.A.M, the concert experience. I was Lizzie McGuire. That's fine. I was into Lizzie McGuire. I enjoyed that. As I get older, I understand these things far less. Certainly Britney Spears. Way into Britney back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. But Lizzie McGuire totally now they're doing an adult Lizzie McGuire show. Not sure I really want to see that. And then after that, Hannah Montana. Oh, okay, yeah, that was okay. It was kind of stupid, but whatever. I kind of got it.
I like the way it played into the existence of Miley as a pop star in the first place. That was fun. And her dad was on the show. I love that.
But JoJo Siwa, I don't get it. This is like a teenage girl who dresses like Bowie did in the 70s, and with the same hairstyles, and her whole weird, sparkly, bubblegummy unicorns and rainbows thing, and her way too energetic, it's like this girl needs to be on medication. I am not. I'm serious. It's a little bit scary. So if your kids are into this, my daughter will never get near this. It will freak her out. It will just send her completely off the roof. But JoJo has hits, and I guess people really love it. So what do I know? It's JoJo Siwa, D.R.E.A.M, the concert experience. From PBS Kids, Splash and Bubbles, Pole to Pole. It's that fish show on PBS Kids. It's got 4 episodes in it. They're very educational. It's very sweet. It's kind of like the same people who do Dinosaur Train. And Splash and Bubbles are cute, and whatever. It's like Finding Dory PBS style. It is what it is. Norm of the North just continues to get traction. I do not understand why. It's Dove approved. Of course it is. Norm of the North. It's polar bear animation. This is like the 50th of these things. Norm of the North Family Vacation. I don't get it. I don't know what the appeal is, but I guess it's slapstick, and I guess some kids really, really love it. And it's all about an epic journey for no real particularly good reason other than to retrieve a crown, and I don't understand the purpose of the crown. But, these things have a formula. They're cutish. The Wiggles are back with Party Time. This is from Kino Lorber. The Wiggles are a little older than I remember from the last time. That's okay. Still, this is one of those ensembles that you get in KidVid and children's television every so often, and they're fine. They're really good with kids, and skews a little younger. My daughter's 7 now, so we're not really into this stuff quite so much anymore. But you never know. Curious George, never a fan. Didn't like the books. Don't really like the animated, but whatever. I'm not the audience here. You get free stickers in this thing. This is Curious George Royal Monkey. And it's just more Curious George stuff, and you learn, and he causes mayhem, and he loves, and he hugs, and he's cute, and he's a monkey. He's a monkey, and there you go. It's whatever. Honestly, it's silly. It's nonsense. I don't get it. But the stickers are great, and when you have kids, it's always great to have a sheet of stickers around because you never know where your kids will put them. Yeah, they will usually 2 or 3 will wind up on the bottom of your foot. You won't know where they came from, but it's awesome. So that's the nice thing is that you get to have that experience.
Stickers.
Oh, they're so good. I'll do a couple more of these, and then we'll take a break and let you weigh in on some
over here. I think is what I got.
On some docs. Let's see. Funny Little Cars, the limited edition, Adventures in the Little Oaza. Let me just say, they straight up ripped off Disney's logo for Cars in the most shameless way possible. I am shocked that this is even out. I'm just amazed. This is from some animation house I've never heard of, and it's a straight up ripoff. It really is a flagrant Disney ripoff, and I'm surprised they haven't been sued. I really am. Is it any good? Not particularly, but boy, I mean, it even has the Route 66 sign on the cover. They're clearly hoping that people see this and confuse it with Disney, think it's some new Disney thing, and that they buy it. Pretty shameless. Cease and desist letter is definitely in the works. Not so shameless is Cinderella and the Secret Prince. You can't copyright Cinderella, so they don't try to even confuse this one with Disney. This is from Shout Kids, and it's actually surprisingly good. My daughter loves the Disney Cinderella, but you can do different takes on it, and this is a much different take on Cinderella, and I'm grateful for it. I think it's really fun, and my daughter will certainly be exposed to this, and I think she'll thoroughly enjoy it. It's slightly different. In this story, the prince has been turned into a mouse by a witch, and so there's a whole different challenge that has to happen. But it's a slightly different Cinderella. She's got a lot of moxie, and she's got a slightly different personality, and it's good. So good on Shout Kids. And this thing's rated PG, by the way. They don't really talk down to kids. I kind of appreciated that too. Princess Emmy, as long as we're on a princess thing, Princess Emmy talks to horses. Princess Emmy needs to be put in a padded room. I'm kidding, of course. This is also from Shout Kids. This is, I guess, sort of like it's like if you took a second-tier Disney princess story and you crossed it with Mr. Ed, maybe. It doesn't really have a lot in My Little Pony. It sort of wants to be a little bit of that, but it doesn't really go as irritatingly in that direction. It's just a little girl. She's got a lot of, she's a princess, and she loves her horses, and she can talk to her horses. And she's got this unfortunate cousin named Jizana, and there's a little bit of an interesting innocuous challenge here, but. Anyway, it's, I'd say save this one for girls who like horses. It's not for boys. It's not even for all girls, but the horse thing is definitely a plus. And let's see. I'll just do these, then I'll send it back to you. Bakugan. We have another Cartoon Network volume of Bakugan, 13 episodes. This is Bakugan Battle Planet. The title of this installment is Origin of Species. Not to be confused with the Charles Darwin book, which it never would be. Bakugan is sort of like American anime, and it's decent. It's got its monsters and its sci-fi and its galactic journeys and fights and whatnot. Feels a little bit like animated Power Rangers as well, but it skews for sub-teens, so sub-teen boys primarily. So. Add it to the collection if you want. Go Fish has some really, really good voice work on it. This is not a shameless Nemo or Finding Dory ripoff. This is from Grindstone, who, as we always point out, either makes really bad action movies with Bruce Willis and Antonio Banderas, or talking animal movies. And some of those talking animal movies are animated, and this is one of them. But no, this is actually really, really sweet. This is about a parrotfish by the name of Alex, who wants to be a superhero. And the opportunity arises when there is a crisis in the reef. It's actually a really, really good message. It's very nicely done. Mark Hamill and Ron Perlman do voices on this and are terrific. So good on Grindstone. They don't do just garbage all the time.
Yeah.
And then I'll last here, a couple of Berenstain Bear titles. One is Berenstain Bears Lend a Helping Hand, which is just, 6 stories of the Berenstain Bears being really wonderful and family-like and teaching you lessons about how to deal with conflict and other things. And then a much more elaborate 26-episode installment of the Berenstain Bears Treehouse Tales Volume 2, which just goes on forever. This is like if you just want to get something done at the house and you want the kids to just stare at the TV and watch Berenstain Bears for 5 hours so you don't have to do anything. That's what this is. This is like a digital babysitter. But I'll say 26 episodes, too much Berenstain Bears. 6, I can handle that.
Indeed.
All right.
A few docs.
Yeah.
Most of which are informative or just lovely in their concept, including this one, To Be of Service. A really, really wonderful film with a great song associated with it by John Bon Jovi. This is a John Bronson film. To Be of Service is about service dogs. It's about veterans with PTSD coming home from our many wars with PTSD. They go through all kinds of different treatments, but it seems that without fail, when paired with a service animal, usually dogs, but not always, when paired with a service animal, veterans suffering from PTSD get better. And not only do they get better, it heals their entire family. It brings the entire. These animals bring entire families. It's an absolutely fascinating thing.
That's so intriguing to me. And I get this too. It's funny because for the first time, we go to Disneyland every so often.
Oh yeah.
And because we have a child, and there's a sign right at the end when you do the check-in that kind of gives you all like not allowed in the park, and you can bring this and that. And you never really pay attention to those things, like not allowed in the park. And I'm like, I know it says heroin is not allowed. I don't need it. I don't need to read that. But I read it the other day because we were in line, and I'm like, I'm sorry, service horse, mini horse is
Really?
allowed. Like, how do you even get that on the tram?
Look,
And apparently, these are not even like these are little horses. These are horses that are the size of
smaller than ponies,
smaller than dogs.
Yeah,
like certainly smaller than a Saint Bernard. Like this is
wow.
It's like probably the size of like an 8-year-old child.
I didn't know
It's
we had bred things down to that size.
did.
You know what? What was that? What was that wacky movie that Downsizing?
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
Look,
I know. My Little Pony is going to be a real thing.
That's not seeming so crazy now.
My Little Pocket Pony.
That movie. Anthropocene, The Human Epoch. This is a documentary that's absolutely fascinating. It's from the same folks who made the doc Manufactured Landscapes.
Yeah.
And what they do is over long periods of time. And Anthropocene is an era. Right. There are different eras across history.
Yeah.
And what they're arguing is that we've moved out of one era and into a new era. And this era is indicative of the way humans change the actual face of the earth in large scale ways. And this film is full of landscape. I won't many of them defacements, but certainly landscape changes that we make with gigantic pieces of equipment, the likes of which I have never actually seen in person, earth-moving pieces of equipment with tires as big as houses, that literally knock the tops off mountains, not to mention the things that we do with explosives to change the landscape. And that is the argument of these folks. And it's a fascinating documentary. Edward Norton is doing a good deal of the narration in the film. There's an interview in the doc with Edward Norton. And much of the visuals in this doc is done with high altitude drones.
Oh wow!
Flying over large scale areas, so you can get these sort of you get scale.
Yeah,
and you can see how big these things are. And as these drones and they're shooting high speed photography, so everything's in very slow motion.
Right.
And as they move in from high altitude further and further down, and everything comes to proportion.
Yeah.
And you realize how big these earth-moving machines are. It's just, it blows your mind that human beings can do this.
Crazy.
We can knock the tops off mountains, and it's not even hard.
Crazy.
It's not even hard. That's what that's all about.
Crazy.
Serendipity. This is also a fascinating documentary. A young French multidisciplinary artist at the age of 30 is diagnosed with breast cancer. And what she decides to do, because she's a young French artist, is document the entire thing, and as well as what she was going through and what she was thinking, in a sort of in multiple disciplines: video, painting.
Agnès Varda shows up in this.
Who we lost just last year,
months ago,
something like that.
Yeah.
Wonderful doc of hers, Agnès by Agnès.
This is like the second, apart from Agnès's own film.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the second to last thing that she appeared in theatrically. But I also think she made her film before she appeared in this one. I think this is literally her last appearance.
Actual appearance in a movie. A fascinating film, wonderful piece of work here. Prune Nori is her name, the young French artist, and deeply enlightening, fascinating stuff. An emotional self-portrait. They are Tattoo Uprising. This is also a neat doc about where the hell tattoos come from.
I know where they come from. I know where they come from. They come from the place down on the corner.
Over there in Hollywood, anyway.
Yeah.
And this really is interesting. Deeply into antiquity. This film looks back to when sailors left Europe and traveled to the Caribbean and then to Tahiti and the South Pacific, and what they were doing there and how they made the tattoos and what they used them for and how they carried the art back to the East, back to the West, I should say. Good stuff. Really interesting. Just deep look into the untold story of what they call Tattoo Uprising. Neat film there. Corporate coup d'etat. What's interesting about this film? This is an explicitly a political film. I don't know that it's particularly liberal leaning or left leaning. This film, what this film says is that it's sort of obvious that corporations have a whole lot of influence over government. Now, this is an obvious sort of thing. I don't
think anybody disputes that.
Would dispute that, and it simply poses the question: is this what we intended? Did we actually intend that for corporations to have this much influence? And there were a lot of reasons for it. What was that that court ruling? That
Citizens United.
The Citizens United, and all of which is explored here. And again, it's posing the question. It's asking whether or not this is what we intended, rather than making some sort of a judgment about it. Interesting that most of this was funded by the government of Canada.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, corporate coup d'etat. Interesting stuff. Chasing Portraits, another fascinating
film.
So, wonderful Polish painter Moshe Renicki, 1881-1943, died in the concentration camps. Renowned at the time of his death. Most of his paintings thought to be lost to time and memoriam in one way or another. His great-great-granddaughter decides she ain't having it.
Yep.
And she starts going and looking for her great-grandfather's paintings, and she starts to find them.
It's great.
Everywhere. And what's horrible about this is that these folks still have to go through all kinds of machinations.
The hoops. The legal hoops, the bureaucratic
And you would have thought through the 90s that governments and museums, a lot of these things are held by governments. Some of them are held in museums. Some of them are in private collections. You would have thought by the time we get through the middle 2000s, that they would have simply said, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. When we understand that we have come into the possession of this absconded with artwork, we are simply going to give it back, period.
Yeah.
But no, she has to kick ass to get her granddaddy's paintings back, which is just disgusting. And he was a wonderful artist, by the way, Chasing Portraits, Time Thieves. Now, this is why this is interesting, because I'm living this one, guys. And everybody, you're going to want to watch this, because this is what this doc is about. Think about all of the things, and you and I are old enough to actually know this. If you're a little bit younger, you might miss this. Think about all of the things that you do now that were not things that regular, ordinary people ever did at a point in history. There was a point before IKEA when regular folks never put together furniture. You bought furniture, it was already put together. Mm-hmm. And, but now, in an ordinary way, lots of people have become furniture manufacturers. You buy a piece of furniture almost anywhere, and there's some portion of your time that you have to spend putting that furniture together. And this documentary goes through all kinds of things like that. Things that you have to do now that used to be, we never used to pump gas. You and I are old enough to remember that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was a kid, but I can remember when this thing called self-service.
Yeah.
And everybody became a gas station attendant.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And it goes through dozens of these things that we never used to do, that we all have to spend some time learning how to and doing now. Really, and if you think about it, all of these things take time. Now, most of them are supposed to be what? Time savers. Mm-hmm. It is not time saving to check yourself out in the self-checkout line of anything. Did it yesterday at the Walmart. Took me 20 with the beep in the bag and pick the thing up. No, you didn't do the thing. Yeah. And then the lady has to come over there anyway, and she's like, "No, take this, put it back over here." And next thing, the thing rings up, and I owe them $3,000. I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" I got a pack of batteries and some gum. Not time-saving at all. This doc is about that. It's a hell of a thing. Time thieves. Time is big business. Hell of a thing.
All right, I'm going to wrap out with the rest of the Kid Vid, and then we will say farewell until next week. Garfield and Friends Season 2. It's too much Garfield. This is remastered. Don't know that it needed to be remastered. Mark hates Garfield because he likes pizza, and I don't know. Mark has issues with Garfield, but nonetheless,
I have issues with animals talking.
I know. I have issues with the Garfield films. I like the comic strip. Don't particularly care for the animated show, but it's all right. Anyway, this is Season 2, just more of the Garfield thing. It's nothing particularly unique. Got a couple here that are holiday-related, past their due date, but it's okay. They'll come around again next year. The Rankin Bass holiday short Cricket on the Hearth on Blu-ray, which is very, very sweet, based on the Charles Dickens story. This is done in 2D animation, cell animation at the time they did Frosty the Snowman. It's kind of more of the same. It's actually very, very sweet. It's very nicely done. Some good voice work and some good Rankin Bass animation work from the day. A Valentine's special from Pinkalicious and Peterific from PBS Kids. This is a Pinkatastic Valentine's Day. Pinkatastic. Valentine's, when you have a kid, is a really weird thing. But I will say this is Valentine's Day in Pinkville, and Pinkalicious wants to just really go to town on Valentine's Day. And you get 5 stories here that are all very, very sweet and gooey and whatnot. Playmobil, the movie, is an attempt to do with the Playmobil world what the Lego films did. And you've got Daniel Radcliffe doing the voice of a secret agent who's got to get together with all these other Playmobil characters to figure out why some of them are disappearing. And it's big, giant toy advertisement is what it is. The only thing that's interesting here is that Jim Gaffigan and Daniel Radcliffe do kind of a comedy shtick together with their voices, and it works. It's fine. A.R.I, my robot friend, A.R.I, The Adventures of A.R.I. So this is basically, it's kind of dumb. This is a live-action film about a boy and his robot friend, and it reminds me a little bit of, what was the dumb thing from the 80s? What was that stupid robot?
You had Johnny Sacco, giant robot.
That John Badham produced thing about, it was E.T. with a robot.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember.
Yeah, anyway, this kind of aspires to that. This is a grindstone thing. This is, not terribly interesting. I think it's really, really kind of silly. The robot's not very convincing, but, some of the jokes are dumb, and kids tend to like dumb jokes. And then the last 2 here are both derivations of Disney animation, which I find really interesting. They use kind of the same titling, and they both kind of borrow their character designs from what Disney has done. It's really interesting how deep that goes. The first is The Big Trip, which these are all devil approved, by the way. Big Trip is sort of it's from one of the writers of Madagascar, and all the characters have the Madagascar look, especially the bear. It looks just like Disney bears. It's a bunch of animals on a mission, and a stolen baby panda, and it's cute and manic and frenetic.
Short Circuit.
And the Short Circuit. Thank you. That was it. Yeah. Arctic Dogs is all about dogs in the Arctic and other animals in the Arctic, and it's got a lot of good voice talent. It's okay. This is on a Blu-ray with digital copy from Lionsgate, and it's all about an Arctic fox voiced by Jeremy Renner, and it's got some, it's kind of a fun adventure thing. John Cleese does the voice of a walrus, and Alec Baldwin, and James Franco, and Omar Sy, and a lot of people, Omar Sy, who was in our Oscar shortlisted short. They all do really good voice work, so I kind of enjoyed Arctic Dogs in a weird way. Angelica Houston, it's good stuff. So with that, we are done this week, and we will be back next week. Have a terrific time. Don't get the coronavirus. Stay locked up. Listen to this podcast. We will save your lives.